Justin Herbert is one of the best young players in the NFL, but on today's show, we're talking about the Chargers' top 5 players under the age of 25.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together for over 6 seasons. We're heading into our 5th season as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys for making this your first listen today, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. But David, I ended up seeing a list of the top 5 players in the NFL, or top 25 players in the NFL under the age of 25, and 2 Chargers made the list. Justin Herbert and Rashawn Slater both deserve it, both in the top 15 of such players. And today we're going to be doing our own list of the Chargers' top 5 players under the age of 25. Obviously, both those guys will make the list, and we'll start with just how impressive Justin Herbert has been. But then we'll round it out with, maybe some Asante Samuel Jr. Where does Josh Palmer make the list? Does Donald Parham make the list? And no rookies on today's list as well. So we'll round out our top 5 and talk about some players as well that could make the list next season. Zion Johnson being number 1. But David, it starts with Justin Herbert, and Pro Football Focus and Locked On alumni Trevor Sikkema made a list for Pro Football Focus of the top 25 players in the NFL under the age of 25. And obviously, someone like Justin Herbert's going to show up on that list as a 24-year-old NFL superstar. He comes in at number 2, and this is what they had to say. Of the past 2 seasons, Herbert has ascended to become one of the NFL's best quarterbacks. And they also said that he's not just one of the most talented quarterbacks under the age of 25. He's just one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and that's just true to this point. And he is easily the Chargers' best player under the age of 25, and it's crazy to think about what this dude has done before the age of 25, David. I mean, the only person that beats him out on this list is Nick Bosa, who's coming off, 15 and a half sack season last year and is deserved to be high up on the list as well. That being said, I think the 49ers would probably trade Nick Bosa for Justin Herbert in a heartbeat. So the quarterback position makes a lot of, makes it a much different conversation. But Justin Herbert, incredible, one of the best players, one of the best young players easily in the league.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself there. I mean, this guy in the first 2 years he's been in the league has been absolutely just crushing records left and right. Most passing yards through the first 2 seasons of a career in NFL history. Most completions through the first 2 seasons in NFL history. Single season record for touchdowns for the Chargers, and 5,000 passing yards. I mean, and that's just a couple of them. Okay. The list is very, very long. Justin Herbert is extremely athletic, very, very, very smart, can make any throw on the football field and make it look easy. This guy is just scratching the surface to where he is capable of taking his game and taking the Chargers. I firmly believe that Justin Herbert is an absolute all-world superstar and is going to take the Chargers to the promised land.
Yeah, to me, he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL already. So, absolutely. I mean, probably very deserving of being number 1 on this list. I'm not going to argue Nick Bosa, but he's just one of the best players in the NFL, one of the most marketable players in a very marketable market for the NFL in Los Angeles, trying to create buzz around that city. There's no one you could ask. I mean, he doesn't say a lot. I guess that's the only other thing. Like if he had, the mouth of Baker Mayfield, he'd probably be on every commercial you see on TV.
Oh, my goodness.
He brings everything else to the table besides that because he's explosive. I mean, talk about stats. I mean, here's some more off-the-wall stats. According to Jeff Kerr from CBS last year, he was tied for the NFL lead in explosive plays accounted for with Tom Brady. They both had 111 in 17 games last year. I'm still getting used to that one. But yeah, I mean, most passing yards, touchdowns, most 300-yard games of any quarterback since the start of 2020. He was the number 3 quarterback in the NFL in QBR last year, only behind Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. He was number 1 in EPA expected points added for the season, adding 120 points expected over what a normal mortal would have scored for the Chargers last year. And also, let's talk about the clutch part of this, David, because that's one thing that we got to see from Justin Herbert. I mean, so many people, he hasn't made the playoffs and all these things. I mean, the arguments are going to keep going. The goalposts are going to keep getting pushed further and further back when people don't want to give credit to someone like Justin Herbert. But there's literally nothing this guy hasn't done in his first 2 seasons. I mean, he's been the best quarterback ever for someone who started both of their first 2 seasons. Obviously, Mahomes came sad a year, right? So that doesn't really count. He has a lot of records to his own right. But
Yeah.
this dude has done anything you could have asked for and more. And I think the clutch part of it, seeing what he did in that performance last year against the Raiders, so many do or die situations where they had to have it, and he kept them in those games. He kept him in that game and just made it go way longer than it should have. I think that's one of the biggest things we saw from him in year 2 as far as growth.
What drives me nuts, what makes me sick of those people out there that say that the Chargers didn't make it to the playoffs because of Justin Herbert or anything of that kind. That makes me absolutely ridiculously sick to my stomach, because Justin Herbert is the only reason why the Chargers were in that situation to begin with. His defense was giving up 25 plus points per game.
27, yeah.
27 points per game, and he had to overcome that and score even more. That's a lot of pressure to put on your quarterback. And when you had to have it the most, Justin Herbert refused to let the Chargers lose. He did every single thing in his power to make sure that the team was going to come out victorious. But unfortunately, it wasn't in his hands, but it was of no fault of his own. Justin Herbert went crazy last year, and that was the first year in that offense. So just sit here and imagine for me, people. He's going to be able to dissect everything that he did wrong in this offseason, a full offseason in the same system, the first time that's happened in many, many years for this kid. This kid is brilliant and very, 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 very talented. So he's going to be able to use that intelligence and that just natural God-given ability with a second year in a system, and he is going to get even better. And that I think that is what should scare everyone around the league, is that this is not Justin Herbert's final form. He is going to get better.
And he already did, right? Had the best rookie season ever by a lot of accounts, right? Best quarterback ever through 2 seasons.
Yep.
And the leap that he made from his first year to last year, I mean, if you're just looking at the numbers, it'd be hard to see how much better he got. But to do that in that offense with what he was working with, and also, right, what he had working against him, like the defense that you talked about, right? And also this from Mike Renner, Pro Football Focus, 46 completions lost due to receiver error. 46 more completions he probably should have had last year. I mean, even if you cut that in half, that's another 23, completions that he has, and however many more yards that would have come along with that, right? And it's several more touchdowns as well. That was the second most in the NFL last year, right behind Tom Brady. So that is something that, he has overcome for the most part. And it's just the most exciting thing, David, is just now seeing what he has. And it's going to be, volatile either way, right? This is not a make it or break it season, but like he has everything he needs at this point to go out there, lead a playoff team, lead a team deep into the playoffs. And, you don't get that playoff experience till you get there. So we don't know what's going to happen there. But right now he has everything he needs to make that deep playoff run. And I think that's what's so exciting about the Chargers right now, is seeing how good this dude has been with what's around him, and now what's around him now, the coaching staff that's around him now, the other elite playmakers that he has around him now, especially on the defensive side, not having to do everything himself. That's what makes this team so exciting right now.
100%. That's exactly what it is. You might not see all the big, sexy yardage numbers and the touchdown numbers that you saw last year, but that's because Justin Herbert's not going to have to be Superman this year. He's going to have a defense that's going to be able to get stops and get turnovers, and they're going to be able to score points themselves. So you might not see all of that same, but I think you're going to see a much freer, much better version, more efficient version of Justin Herbert, because he's not going to have all of the weight on his shoulders. He's going to be able to go out there, be free, understand the offense, master the offense, and go on and execute it efficiently, effectively, and he's going to score a lot of touchdowns, but it might not be as much as the years before because he has a much better supporting cast.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to say he's not going to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get to those numbers, but I think with how efficient the offense should be now, how much better the offensive line should be now, I think there's no reason to think he's not going to have a better season in 2022, which is crazy because of how good he was last season. And he has to improve and he has to keep it going because no one cares what you've done about through 2 seasons, right? And what you've done. Like, that doesn't make you an all-time great quarterback. It's doing it year in and year out. And I believe he's going to do that, and he's going to get better, and he's going to lead this team to great things in 2022. And that's what's so exciting, because I mean, we're going to talk about Rashawn Slater, right? And our number 3 on the top 5 list. And Rashawn Slater is just in a crazy shadow of Justin Herbert as far as, what you did in your rookie season unfairly. But Justin Herbert through 2 seasons is putting up like GOAT numbers. Like that's what he's done. He's been the greatest of all time through his first 2 seasons. And that's undeniable at this point, even though he hasn't made the playoffs and there's other things he hasn't done. But just statistically, the performance he's had, the production he's had, GOAT status. And the other thing that's GOAT status, David, and has achieved it, is Built Bars. And that's what we have to get to now, because Built Bars are the GOAT of protein bars. And when you didn't think it could get any better, then you see a Built Bar that's cake batter flavored, David. We're talking about birthday cake flavored Built Bars out right now. I love birthday cake flavored things. I like white chocolate more than regular chocolate, so it's hitting everything in my alley right now. And it's packed with 16 grams of protein and 150 calories. You're not going to get many birthday cake flavored things for 150 calories, and they're definitely not going to be packed with 15 grams of protein, David. So when you're dieting and you're trying to break up the monotony of what that looks like, a lot of chicken, a lot of broccoli, and you feel like you want a candy bar, save yourself those extra, 200 calories. Go get a Built Bar, get that birthday cake flavored Built Bar, or you could go with those Built Puffs, right, David? You could go cinnamon churro, you could go brownie batter, you could go lemon dip cheesecake. Like, there's so many great flavors to choose from at built.com. And that's not even talking about the Built granola bars, the regular Built Bars with chocolate brownie, right? Crazy other flavors, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, so many great flavors. And you're getting all the nutritional things and things that fit on your diet as well. And the best part is you can even save some money, because if you go to built.com right now, you can use the promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, David. Well, the number 1 guy on this list was pretty obvious, and the number 2 guy on this list is pretty obvious. For Pro Football Focus, he ends up coming in at 14. And of course, I'm talking about the phenom left tackle Rashawn Slater, who's doing pass sets out in Bora Bora on his honeymoon, because the dude doesn't know how to quit. Yeah, and this is what Pro Football Focus had to say. I mean, 14, he was only behind Tristan Wirfs as far as offensive lineman, who is in the top 4. So, I mean, that's not bad company to be keeping for sure. And Tristan Wirfs is only 23 as well. Rashawn Slater just turned 23 in March, so he's still pretty much, 2 years away from even getting to 25, and he's already making a list like this. But this is what they said. Slater did what very few players have been able to do throughout the course of NFL history: play left tackle as a rookie and not just survive the season, but thrive in doing so. Slater played 1,116 snaps, which is 3rd amongst all rookie linemen, and finished the season with an 83.6 overall grade. His 3.7 pressure rate allowed was tied with Jedrick Wills as the lowest rate surrendered by a rookie left tackle since 2010. So, David, he made an all-pro team. He did something that Justin Herbert hasn't done, right?
Yes.
And Trent Williams, I mean, was easily the number 1 guy, and the next best guy on that list for the all-pro team was Rashawn Slater. And I mean, this dude is just everything you were expecting and more. And I think that's the impressive thing. And it's crazy when you hear him talking about that, cringing when he watches his rookie tape as an all-pro, right? And I think that's what the exciting thing about this dude is. It just seems like even doing something that almost no rookie left tackle has ever done, he's still critiquing himself. He's still trying to get better. And I think that's what's going to lead to a very, very long and successful career for sure.
Yeah, not resting on the laurels of acquiring a second-team All-Pro nod, which is incredibly impressive, especially at one of the most technical positions on the football field.
Yeah.
At left tackle. I mean, that is absolutely insane. But he's just not satisfied. He's never satisfied with the performance, which to me is like mind-boggling, because I've watched the Chargers for 25 years, and you don't really see a talent like Rashawn Slater come along ever. And the Chargers have one. They have a legitimate left tackle. And I think what's so special about Rashawn Slater is he's not just a pass protector. He is an excellent run blocker too. And I think you look at the PFF grades and he's just as good at either one. As a pass protector, 80.3 overall grade. As a run blocker, 80.2. So he is excellent at both avenues of the game. Oh, by the way, 16 games, 4 sacks, 6 hits, and 26 pressures, and 752 pass blocking snaps. So just to give you a better idea of how absolutely prolific that is, That's one sack every 188 pass blocking snaps. Hello? That is just unbelievably elite.
That
And
math
that's
is not
something
right.
he
Wait
is
a second.
disgusted about. Excuse
26
me.
pressures. That math can't be right.
Oh my God.
26 pressures, 752 pass blocking snaps. I think that's like probably like it's definitely not 1 in 100 and something as far as far as pressures allowed. But sacks allowed. I mean, what is that? 752 pass blocking snaps, and you allowed four sacks. That's
sacks.
every 200 almost pass blocking snaps before
That's
you're
what I was
giving up a
saying.
sack.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
188 pass blocking snaps. He's only
Over the sacks. I thought you were
one
saying
sack. Yeah,
pressures. Yeah,
right.
that's
One sack.
well, and I
yeah.
mean, you remember it too. You go back to Cleveland, right? When it's like they were playing Myles Garrett. I think he gave
Yeah.
up 2 sacks technically in that game, and he was like telling Austin Eckler not to chip on him because in one of the plays he had actually chipped Myles Garrett back towards
Yeah,
Justin Herbert, and
into
it
a
ended up
sack.
in a sack against
Yeah.
Myles Garrett. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's insane. Like, and that's the other thing too is like I remember the Chase Young Rashawn Slater matchup was so like hyped up, and then that that first game. I mean, it didn't even start then though, right? It was training camp. It was like the first day Joey Bosa and Rashawn Slater went one-on-one against each other, and it's like all the reports saying he held his own. Like, I remember when I saw it, and I was like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing because he's not the biggest guy, right?
No,
he's not the strongest guy. I mean, I think he's way more athletic than you'd probably think. Like, I think the dude is a freak athlete for what he's able to do in his body control and balance and all that stuff. But like, that was the moment. Then you back it up, playing Chase Young, the defensive rookie of the year before.
You made him switch sides.
Yeah, you made him switch sides. I mean, and the thing is, David, is he walked in and like immediately shamed like the Chargers' prior 15 left tackles. Like he immediately came in and just like, oh yeah, like I mean, there was Russell Okung was fine for some of that.
Good. He was solid. He had some good moments.
Yeah, but like
not as consistent or as dominant as Rashawn Slater has been.
It was one really good year for the most part, even with that, right? That 3-year contract, know, and obviously some of that's out of his hands. They end up trading him eventually. But like when you look at what Rashawn Slater's done, like it's so crazy because it's like, since we'd started covering the Chargers, right? That's what we had talked about so much, is finding that left tackle, fixing the offensive line. So to get someone like Rashawn Slater with his brighter future, like he will be the best tackle in the league at some point.
Oh yeah,
he will be considered
100%,
and that's just the best present that someone like Justin Herbert could get.
He's on a rookie deal too,
right? Yeah, he's not going to. Good Lord, what that contract is going to be by the time he needs. Let's not even think about that. David, we are doing our top 5 list though. Those were the 2 that made it in the NFL. Top 25 in the NFL.
Sure.
And it makes sense because it's slim pickings after that. We're not using rookies because Zion Johnson, you could make the argument for, but he hasn't played a snap. So it's not fair to say he's better than these players that we have actually seen play. So, David, who did you go with number 3 on your list? Well, we both ended up going with him, but who is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's Asante Samuel Jr. I mean, the fantastic young corner who unfortunately dealt with a couple of concussions in his rookie year. But before that, man, you put on the tape and you watch this guy and you just get excited. I mean, you see the ability to cover on the outside, to really be able to lock guys up, the ball skills, I mean, the feistiness, the tackling ability, the run support ability. And this guy's a sponge. He loves the game. He's there learning. You see him getting better, and you really hope that the concussions aren't going to have a lasting effect on his play and doesn't change the way he goes out there, because, man, before those concussions, man, he was really trending and ascending very, very high and looked like a very, very, very good young corner in this league.
Before the second concussion, he was the Chargers' best corner. And then the tough thing with him is 3 of his 4 worst games of the season came in the last 3 games after he came back from that second concussion. And some of that was freak stuff, kind of like Najee Harris. He takes a brutal knee to the head in that Pittsburgh game, right? After just a couple weeks before that, having that injury. But look at Joey Bosa, right? Had two close together. Had to really, really go through it, and then comes back to have a fully healthy year. Like, that's not always how it works, because there's also Brandon Flowers and guys like that where it never gets better. You know what I mean? And like, it continues to be a problem. But based on this ranking for me, it's seeing what I saw in the early part of the season, seeing that the talent is there. I mean, the dude is immensely talented. Even the receptions he was giving up, right? He made it so tough for receivers to get the ball.
Yeah.
And I mean, he had just a couple of brutal, rookie mistakes, But
Sure.
even then, the most yards he gave up all season was 66 in a single game. So it's not like he was just getting torched for a buck
No.
20. And he had a pretty gnarly slate of receivers that he had to go up against as well. So like
Yeah.
Asante Samuel Jr., one of the most talented young defenders on the Chargers, easily comes in at number 3 on our list of the top 25 players under the age of 25 on the Chargers. And this was a tough spot, right? Like I think if you're, especially 3, 4, and then
It
who you're
was.
putting in for 5, it got really, really tough. So coming up next, we'll get into numbers 4 and 5 on the list of the Chargers players under the age of 25. But David, I'm going to bet on Asante Samuel Jr. bouncing back in a big way. And I'm going to be placing all my bets at betonline.net because it's the best place to place your bets. And there's no better time to get in on the action, guys. And I know I've said that before, but like, have you guys been watching the playoffs right now? Like the playoffs have been crazy, whether it's NHL, I mean, 5 game 7s in the first round of the playoffs, right? You had a couple more game 7s in the NBA basketball playoffs, and that's heating up. I mean, another crazy game before we did this night with the Heat and the Celtics. Like it's been nuts, guys. The only thing crazier than game 7 is game 7 with some action on it. I mean, you will be having the ride of your life to be sure, but it's not just basketball. It's not just hockey. It's baseball. There's NFL futures right now, Justin Herbert for MVP, the Chargers to win the AFC West. And there's also things like UFC straight to your favorite Vegas casino games. You can find something for everybody at betonline.net. And you can also change your fate with live in-game betting so you guys can turn things around. And I just love having that option, especially when I make a pretty dumb bet. So make sure you check out BetOnline with the best odds, props, and lines that you're going to find in the business, and head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, David. Well, so far our top 5 list of players on the Chargers under the age of 25 is Justin Herbert, Rashawn Slater, and Asante Samuel Jr. And that the last one was the toughest of them. Even though David, for a good part of the night, forgot about Asante Samuel Jr. and forgot that he existed. And I wasn't supposed to say
Thanks.
that.
Appreciate that. Blast mode. Right.
I mean,
now.
it was tough though, because like
Yeah.
he could have been 4, he could have been 5,
Sure.
depending on how you're looking at this. And I mean, maybe someone deserving doesn't get on this list depending on how you're looking at it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you're only as good as your young nucleus, and that's the thing is with a team like the Chargers, especially with multiple players commanding $20+ million salaries, multiple players commanding $18+ million salaries.
Yeah.
There's some big contracts on the books, and a couple more looming with Justin Herbert eventually, and Derwin James immediately, right? In that order. But I think the thing is you need these young players to come through. And when we were doing this, David, really what it came down to was the last 2 draft classes for the most part, right? I mean, those are most of the guys on the Chargers who are under 25. And we only went with it for the guys who were 25 as of us recording this, because somebody on the list may or may not have a birthday in like a week or something. It could be cheating, but gives us a good reason to talk about who made it to number 4 on our list. And for number 4, David, maybe a little off the wall here, we went with Nazir Adderley, or at least I did. I mean, I know we were kind of flip-flopping on 4 and 5, but Nazir Adderley, first of all, there wasn't a ton of options. Let's just say that. And that's not a shot at Nazir Adderley, but like this is somewhere like what Kenneth Murray, put Kenneth Murray on, you know what I mean? Like there's just certain guys that just you can't really use, especially from the last 2 draft classes. And we're not using rookies, obviously. But Nazir Adderley has gotten better every season.
Yes.
He hasn't quite lived up to the second round expectations and the first round buzz that was surrounding him coming out of Delaware. But he also basically had to take a medical redshirt his rookie season.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's hard to really count that at all against him. The one biggest thing is the knock, I would say, David, against Nazir Adderley is the 1 interception, right? In his career. And even if we're saying 2 years, right? The 1 interception is the biggest thing, because there's a lot of other things he's actually done pretty well.
Well, what's so annoying with Nas is that he has had probably at least 6 or 7 almost interceptions where he's been in the right place. Like he understands what's going on. He's diagnosing the play correctly. He's getting himself in position, and then he just drops the interception. And it's like, man, come on, Nas. Like if for you to take the next step in your career, the ball skills and the ball production needs to start following. Because I think one thing that we saw last year that really, really changed in his game was his physicality. I think he's a much more physical player. I think that the system that he plays in now, I think it really suits his skill set. I think he really showed himself in run support. I think he's already kind of shown that he's a pretty reliable last line of defense defender. I do appreciate that part of his game, but I think the physicality aspect of it is the one thing that I feel like he has gotten better at, like hand over fist, from when we first saw him to now.
Yeah, and he had some really, really good plays, throughout the course of the season, especially on that Philly special that was running
Yeah.
against him getting Drew Lock before he could get into the end zone against the Broncos. Like, that was a great heads up play, a great play by him. And I think the second biggest problem, maybe the biggest problem, honestly, even just besides missing the interceptions, is 18 missed tackles last season. That's the one that's hard to get around, right? And he obviously made it to number 4 on this list, and there's a lot of good things. But I think the good thing with that, though, even though that's an alarming number, 9 of those missed tackles happened in a 3-game span over the first half of the season. So he got better throughout the season. He was much better later on, and it was all around the time when he was missing a couple of games due to injury too. So I think that could have played a part of it, because it just watching him, you can tell that part of his game has gotten a lot better, especially since last year. And I think the other thing with him, David, is the plays that you don't see where he's doing something right, because it's like the times he's not targeted because he's covering someone well. That's the part of the game you don't get to see most of the time, right? Especially from the broadcast. But I would say that this, even though he has given up a passer rating over 130, and you see that, around 130, it was just under, but like, that's brutal, right? That's not great. But then you actually look at how it breaks down, right? I mean, he only allowed 260 yards last year over the entire season. That's not very much at all.
No.
He only had one game where he allowed more than 37 yards. That's not very much at all. And I think the biggest thing is all of the big plays that he potentially shut down, right? Because that's what you're not seeing, is all the big plays over his head. You don't see a lot of plays over Nazir Adderley's head. And the stats back that up. He only allowed 1 reception last year of over 21 yards. That was it. That means every other reception he allowed was less than 21 yards. Like, that's pretty damn good for that being what your main objective is, being in that cover 2 shell, being that back line, right? And making sure those explosive plays don't happen. But I think he's very deserving of number 4 on the list.
I think he's primed to break out, personally. I mean, I've said it many times before, but I feel like this is the year he's really going to put it all together.
I thought I'd put him on our list of guys we're not allowed to predict to break out anymore, along with Jerry Tillery and Kenneth Murray are the guys we're not allowed to
I'm a big Nas fan, and I want to see him do well.
I mean, I was like, when he was coming out as a rookie, coming out in the draft, like, I mean, I liked him at 28. The year they took Jerry Tillery at 28. The fact that he got to 60 was a big upset that year. Thornhill ended up going really late in the second round that year as well. There were some weird picks that happened, but I mean, I was super excited about it, and because he was that's the thing, is like, it's not just the lack of turnovers in the NFL. It's like, that was his specialty. Like, that was his calling card coming out of Delaware and FCS program, but that's a big jump, obviously. So, David, it's time for the last guy on the list. This might have been the toughest one. And really, there was only a few options. Josh Palmer, right, is one of them. Donna Parham is another one. Jalen Guyton, I mean, is a sneakily one of them for what he's made, still being under 25, obviously. Oh, and then Nazir Adderley, obviously, also turns 25 on May 31st. So we were cheating a little bit, but I'm glad we got to talk about him a little bit. Josh Palmer ended up being the pick here, David. And I think for both of us, we both liked him. We both had him in our top 5. We, when we talked about it, we had him going number 5 here, and had to. It was basically between him and Donald Parham, But I think with Josh Palmer, 33 catches, 353 yards, the type of catches he had, right? I mean, the touchdowns he had, the 4th and 21 touchdown against the Raiders in the last game of the season, trying to come back against the Patriots, having that, crazy contested touchdown catch that he had in that game, being, just a very well-rounded receiver, I think, is what gets him on this list, because I think with more opportunities, those numbers probably would have been a lot different.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a guy that you feel really good about when, you got to put him on the football field. You just know what you're going to get. You just know there's not going to be a tremendous drop-off between, your top guys, and when he steps on the football field. He's not the fastest receiver, but like Keenan Allen, he runs very clean, crisp routes, and that really helps him gain separation, and he has very strong hands. He only was credited with one drop all of last season. So I think he's a guy that you trust, and he put in the extra work. He cares. It's very, very important to him. I mean, we talked about, a lot how he, really established that relationship with Justin Herbert very quickly, because after every single practice, he was there catching passes and trying to get that camaraderie and that chemistry down. And I think in those moments to where he had to come on the football field because somebody went down with an injury, that's why he was able to step in and play so well, because he put in the work off the field, and it mattered when he stepped on the field. And I think that's the thing that you get, you're so encouraged about Josh Palmer. And you just see that his game is going to resonate. It's going to play at this level.
Yeah, it definitely plays at this level. It's just, when are we going to see it? You know what I mean? Because
Right.
right now he is still the third option, and Keenan's not going anywhere. And Mike Williams just got locked up for the next 3 years. So it's just,
Yeah.
how do we end up seeing more of him in an offense that we think is going to be a little bit more run heavy? I think that's really the only thing that's going to really slow this dude down. He's only 22 years old at this
Yeah.
point. He had the least drops out of anyone that was catching, more than 10 passes last year for the Chargers. He only had one drop. You can say get in front of the jugs machine and turn it up, but Keenan, you also had 10 catches, buddy. This dude actually,
10
caught the
drops.
ball.
Yeah.
10 drops. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
100 plus catches, but 10 drops as well. You could have had so many more. But I mean, I think we're probably more bullish on him maybe than some. I think the thing about Donald Parham is just, it's been 2 seasons, and I think he's played very well for what he was, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and there's different expectations. Josh Palmer's a 3rd round pick. Donald
Sure.
Parham's from the XFL. You know what
Yep.
I mean? So
Yep.
and from Stetson University. So it's a
Right.
little bit different. And I think 30 catches over his first 2 years is obviously a little bit underwhelming. You'd like
Yeah.
to see more. You'd like to see a few more touchdowns from him as well, especially being a 6'8" monster.
Yeah.
He's a guy that won't be able to make this list next year because he'll be too old.
Mhm.
But I think, should have the opportunity to have a big piece of this offense, because they're going to want to feature that dude if he's out there. He's just so big, so athletic. He's
He's a matchup
mismatch.
nightmare. And,
Yeah.
and I think if you get him on the football field and you put him in anywhere you want, you put him in the slot and you got a slot defender trying to cover someone who's 6'8", it's not fair. I mean, and he's crazy athletic for his size. He really does a fantastic job of making people miss. I mean, his yards after catch is actually, per reception is pretty impressive. In 2020, he was 5.8 yards after catch per reception and 7 yards after catch per reception in 2021. So, I mean, he's good with the ball in his hands in the open field. I mean, for a guy that size, he shouldn't be able to move the way that he does. And I think that's why we haven't seen the best of Donald Parham Jr. I think he's a guy that's gotten better as a blocker, but we know what he is. He's a receiving threat. And that's how he needs to be featured. And as long as he's able to stay on the field, I expect a lot more production out of Donald Parham.
Yeah, I mean, a lot more is tough just because, he's the 2nd string tight end, right? I mean, he had
Yeah.
20 catches last year and so many mouths to feed. You know what I mean? That's
Sure.
just always tough to carve
I
out.
mean, I should
targets
probably
pretty
say
easily.
30 to 40. I can expect 30 to 40 catches if he's on the football field. I think that's
40
reasonable.
is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it just depends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How many targets are their tight ends getting? Because how many receptions do you think Gerald Everett's going to have?
Yeah.
Gerald, you know what I mean? He might have close to 50. Are the tight ends getting 90 catches this year? Probably not. You know what I mean? So it just, we don't know how it's all going to play out. I mean, we
Sure.
don't know, who's going to be healthy. And for him, obviously, getting healthy, getting back after that scary injury that he suffered late in the season last year. I mean, that's the most important thing. But
Absolutely.
definitely a little bit of a diamond in the rough there with Donald Parham. I mean, he's super, super talented and should be able to carve out a role on this team that's, has an ever improving offense. Next year, David, Zion Johnson will be on the list. I'm going to make that bold statement right now. He wasn't eligible for this year's list. The sneaky dark horse.
I think Isaiah Spiller could also, join that list. Yeah, there you go,
That's
man.
the dark horse for the next year. We didn't talk about that yet.
He's gonna get the opportunities this year. I really believe he's gonna get a handful of carries this year to prove, why he was a great pick and why he's gonna be on this list next year.
Yeah, man. I mean, Isaiah Spiller, I like the pick. I thought it was good value in the 4th round. It's going to be really interesting to see how his game translates. You know what I mean? Because it's and I was obviously much higher on him than I have the last 2 years, but the Chargers have sown a lot of doubt into their, running backs in the draft process. So I like him much more. I think he's on a different level than the 2 other guys they drafted in the 2 previous seasons. But yeah, I mean, Isaiah Spiller is absolutely a guy who will have the opportunity because you need the opportunities. And that's the biggest thing, right? he'll have a chance to definitely earn that role. And I mean, as far as the, bar set for the RB2 for the Chargers last couple of seasons, not very high,
Yeah.
right? The best RB2 the Chargers have had in the last 5 years, Austin Eckler, right behind Melvin Gordon. That
Yeah.
that that was the best that they've done. That was the last time they had two really, really effective backs that were both out there a significant amount of the season. But the Chargers have some really, really good young players. And I think now that we're seeing the draft classes that we've seen and how these, Brandon Staley's first draft class with the team has already played out with Rashawn Slater looking good. 3 of those picks making this list, right? The first 3 picks they made in Brandon Staley's, career as a head coach all made this list of the top 5 players under 25 for the Chargers. So I think that really looms large for what is to come. But the Chargers are going to have a really tough schedule. So all these dudes are going to have to contribute, and they're going to need some really big players, especially from some players who we might not be expecting it from. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. They better get it really together, Dave, because they have a very tough schedule. And a big part of that is the Chargers having to play the NFC West in 2022. That means the Rams, the Battle of LA, right? That means the Cardinals, that means the 49ers, and the Seahawks and Drew Lock. But on tomorrow's show, we're going to be getting into how the Chargers stack up against the NFC West, since that is going to be a big part of their schedule in 2022, and how many games we think they could win out of that. And the biggest competition will be from that, right? The Rams, obviously, the Super Bowl champions, and taking them down. But that is going to do it for today's show. Also, make sure to be aware later on in the week, we will be doing Fan Mail Friday. So hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnLAC. We'll put a post out and get some questions out there. You can also find us on Instagram at LockedOnChargers. And we also have a Locked On Chargers Facebook page. We post the show to all of those places every single day. And you can also make sure you don't miss the show by subscribing to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel. That's the easiest way. Or following the show for free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcast from. If you guys want to get a voicemail in this week, the number is 323-524-7924. And we can try to get that in on Friday's show. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow when we talk about how the Chargers will stack up against the NFC West. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.